Hello there. Welcome to Just the Dis. We talk about Blu-rays here. My name's Brian. And this topic doesn't always garner the most views for me, but if I'm being honest, one of my favorite things in cinema is classic comedy. And so I would urge you to stick with me if that's something that you could be interested in, and I do recommend it. I have a couple here. One from 1939 and one from 1964 to talk about. Two Kino Blu-rays. I'll start with W.C. Fields and You Can't Cheat an Honest Man. I think, for my money, W.C. Fields is one of the funniest, film figures, period. Up there with Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin and Harold Lloyd, and those silents are great, but he is just, to me, in terms of his style and his approach to comedy, which a lot of it is based on, and I've said this before, I think, on the channel, but a lot of it's based on characters annoying each other, and that is something that I actually really, can understand. When you have kids, you start to understand, especially when they get to be teenagers, the idea of folks annoying each other as a point of contention. But anyway, I like that a lot of his comedy derives from that. And, he is very self-deprecating. He is not afraid to make himself look silly, but he's also just very clever in a lot of ways. And so this one is directed by George Marshall, came out in 1939. I like that his films are typically pretty short. This one's 79 minutes. This is a brand new 2K master. I love that Kino's doing a lot of these W.C. Fields films. They've already put out my two favorites, which are It's a Gift and The Bank Dick, which I highly recommend. Both great Blu-rays. And this was one I hadn't even seen. I thought I had seen it, but it's pretty good. It is a circus-based story, and it kind of has this subplot-ish thing where the characters, that there's like a family, basically. There's a younger sister and a brother, and the brother wants the sister to marry this rich guy because it will help him. He's like, think about me, and she doesn't want to marry the rich guy, blah, blah. But the problem is that their dad runs the circus, and he's kind of a less than classy kind of guy. Like, he wouldn't mix well with a high class group, really. So he runs this circus, and the first time we see him, he's actually retreating, making a run for the state line while being chased by a cop and somebody else. This guy who wants to catch him for some con artistry, if you will. And he's able to get his circus wagons, not their wagons, but he has trucks and a wagon and an elephant. A guy's riding an elephant. He's able to get across the state line, and the sheriff can't help him because he's now in another jurisdiction. But then we get to see sort of him at this circus. He's taking tickets in this ticket booth, and the movie opens with this wonderful scene, which features one of my favorite sort of physical things that he does, and he has a lot of great physical things as well as verbal things. Like, there's one bit where, like, he asks the guy who's in the ticket office as he's opening it, there's a bottle of booze, and he's like, I'll please take your hands off my breakfast, which I think is a good joke. But there's always, like, people crowding in. It becomes kind of like the stateroom scene in Night at the Opera, crowding into this little ticket booth and things dropping on the ground. And W.C. Fields does this thing where when something drops on the ground, he grabs his hat and he throws it up in the air, and he has this great shruggy thing that he does. I can't even describe it. It's like, it's a great physical bit of business that he does, that he's showing that he's like totally discombobulated, and I absolutely love it. So you get to see him doing that stuff. He does a lot of that stuff in It's a Gift as well. But he's great, and he's got tons of great lines, and there's this fun rivalry, which I will say is maybe the only flaw of the film for me, is there's a lot of Charlie McCarthy and Edgar Bergen, the ventriloquist duo, very famous, very popular around this time. And if the film has any flaw, it is that it gives them too much screen time. And I think they're funny, they play off each other well. I can see why they were popular. But when you've got W.C. Fields over here doing his stuff, which is just amazing, like it's some of my favorite, like I won't go into all the gags, but like the dialogue and the exchanges and the con artist stuff he's doing is among, it's top tier stuff. And then you go over to this and it's like a little bit more milquetoasty stuff. And they end up spending like, I would say a third of the movie or more with these two and this plot where they're trying to get this girl. And again, I get it. It was at the time they were trying to team up these two things, and there's this rivalry between Charlie McCarthy and W.C. Fields. It's pretty funny where they're antagonizing each other, and there's actually a great bit where he throws Charlie McCarthy to the lions, and they have this great sort of set piece where this actual lion tamer comes in and tries to get Charlie McCarthy out of the mouth of the lions. And then they realize, oh no, he's actually in the mouth of the alligators. And they have an alligator scene, and they go over and try and take him out of the alligator. And it becomes like this vendetta thing. But again, it goes back to this plot of like, he's running this circus, and there's lots of nice little bits of that. And then there's the daughter-son subplot. And, him showing up at this high-class event and not doing a great job, like really offending everybody. And that's pretty funny to me too. Just his sort of anti-authoritarian streak has always been something I enjoy. But anyway, I enjoyed it. It's a fun discovery. Like I said, a little too much of these guys, but the field stuff is top. Really well done. It has an audio commentary by filmmaker historian Michael Schlesinger, who we'll come back to in a second because he has a commentary also on the next disc I'm going to talk about. And it's great. Like, he's really well researched and just knows the actors and has lots of great tidbits about Fields and the movie. And I really enjoyed it. Like, a great addition to your W.C. Fields Blu-ray collection. And again, this is stuff I really enjoy. So if you like this channel, know that this is part of me, this classic comedy stuff, right? So the next one is Man's Favorite Sport. This is Howard Hawks' film from 1964, which I've heard Tarantino call crazy paraphrased remake of Bringing Up Baby. And you can definitely see the similarities between those two films. If you like Bringing Up Baby, which is one of the classic screwball comedies of all time, this does have a lot of similar character beats in it. And, in the case of Bringing Up Baby, you have a sort of an archaeologist who ends up running into this very flighty woman who just throws his life completely into chaos. And this is sort of similar, except in this case, we have Rock Hudson, who plays this guy who works for Abercrombie and Fitch, and he's written a book on fishing, which we come to find out he didn't even really write. Like, he doesn't know anything about fishing. And then he gets roped into this fishing tournament, and Paula Prentice plays this sort of whirlwind of a woman that he meets who actually does know about fishing and who comes along and is part of this tournament and sort of shows him how to fish, shows him how to do the things he's written about in his book. And it's very entertaining. It's silly. It's very broad. It's maybe one of the broadest comedies that Howard Hawks ever did. So your tolerance for that will vary, because there's some ridiculous gags. There's like even a gag with like a bear on a scooter at one point, like it's cartoony and its level of goofiness, but it does have a certain charm to it. And Paula Prentice is very affable, and I really dig her in this movie. And I had remembered is like this comedy of like macho, like I'm the man, let me show you, how to do these manly things, when in fact it's the complete opposite. And Hawks was actually a director who did a lot of things with stronger female characters, and this is a great bit with that. In fact, Paula Prentice has a friend that is, and the duo of them are just always kind of making fun of Rock Hudson in this movie. But it ends up, the last 2/3 of the movie is set out in the wilderness, which is mostly sets, but there is some outdoorsy stuff. And there's something about the outdoorsy camping setup of 1960s films, that time when the technology of camping was getting really complicated. Like there's scenes with Rock Hudson trying to put together a tent, and oh my gosh, all these little, they've actually made tents a lot simpler now, but all these little rods that you can't, get it to go together. And so he's supposed to be testing out all this Abercrombie and Fitch material, these equipment, this state-of-the-art, if you will, equipment, and he can't do much with it. It reminds me, there's actually a Goofy cartoon that's similar, and it came out I want to say around this time, in the early 60s, where Goofy is going camping, and it's, he can't put a tent together. It's really similar kind of stuff. So if you dig that, this is more like a live-action version of that in a lot of ways. But, it's a love story, and it's cute. It's a cute movie, ultimately. And so it was fun to revisit. It was one that I hadn't seen in a while, and it's a later Hawks film. He's one of my favorite directors, and so it's nice to see it looking very good. It does look very nice. And as I said, it does have a commentary track with film historian, filmmaker Michael Schlesinger, and he's joined by Paula Prentice and her longtime, of I think about 60 years, husband, actor-director Richard Benjamin. And it's really nice to have them there. Although, I'll be honest and say, they're both getting older. Paula is, this movie is 60 years, not quite 60 years. It's almost, I want to say it's not quite 60 years, but I can't remember what I did, 2 weeks ago. So it's not surprising that it seems evident to me that she doesn't really have a lot of memories of the movie. Richard Benjamin, it's nice to have him add some stories about Rock Hudson and things like that, and try and pull out some information from Paula when, she doesn't seem to remember things. But she doesn't often say, it feels like every question she should maybe say, I don't remember, but she's trying to be good and at least play along like she remembers, and she might. She does seem to remember a few things, but ultimately, I can't blame her. This is such a long time ago. But again, it's really charming to have both of them there. They are an adorable couple, one of the longest running married couples in the history of Hollywood, actually. And I'm a big fan of both of them as performers, big fan of Richard Benjamin as a director, and he adds some things because they talk about some long take stuff that they do in this movie, which is kind of neat, and how difficult that can be. They talk about the production design, which I really do like, the production design. Like the Abercrombie and Fitch store at the beginning is just like a cool 60s set. Like it's just got all this equipment, and it just feels like a cool 60s store. And you can kind of see there's like some stained glass weird sets. There's this great rotating bar set where the bar is in the center of this. It's in the top of a building, and the bar actually rotates around the room. And it's a great. They do a great thing with it where Rock Hudson is talking to Paula Prentice and her friend who are sitting at the bar, and he isn't sitting at the bar. Instead, he's walking along with them around the bar, so the background is always changing. It's actually a really interesting shot and kind of a funny bit. So there's lots of little things like that to amuse throughout that I think, Hawks is actually trying to make it visually interesting and fun. And there's some good running gags I'm not going to spoil, but ultimately it was a very pleasant and enjoyable rewatch. And like I said, really nice looking Blu-ray. So a couple classic comedies that get my recommend. You Can't Cheat an Honest Man and Man's Favorite Sport. And that's it. So thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.